The 19th of November marks World Toilet Day. It's a day recognized by the United Nations to be promoted through a worldwide public campaign that encourages action to tackle the global sanitation crisis. To date, there are more than 2 billion people still living without safe toilets around the world, indicating a global water and sanitation crisis. Now, this year, World Toilet Day is observed under the theme Accelerating Change. For more on this, we're joined now by Water Research Commission Executive Manager for Wastewater Management, Bhagwan. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. As we celebrate World Toilet Day, of course, many questions come to the forefront around the type of changes which are much needed and sought. As we try and get a sense of what accelerating change would mean, how would you define that as we commemorate World Toilet Day?
Good morning, Paul, and thank you for having me as well as your viewers. Well, look, change is required. I mean, we're not making significant progress on the sanitation side in terms of closing the gap of those 2 billion people. And one of the big problems is that we have a very binary paradigm around how we provide sanitation. So you either get what we call a hole in the ground if you're poor in the form of a VIP or equivalent, or you get a waterborne system if you live on the other side of the fence and are able to pay. So we've never had significant innovations in between that kind of response to the changing requirements that society is going through. So accelerating change is about how do we shift that paradigm to bring more inclusivity in sanitation. And one of the game changers is around driving and bringing more innovative sanitation solutions. Now, we're sitting in a situation where, as we're tackling the sanitation problems, we are also compounded by several factors, and we experience this in our own country. One is that water is becoming much more scarcer to flush. It's becoming premium, so it's beyond just a water scarcity issue and a water security. It also then talks to a sanitation security issue. Okay, and I think many of us in this year have experienced the sanitation security issue when we had a lot of water shutdowns, etc. And the biggest thing that impacted us is sanitation, because we all locked into waterborne sanitation systems. So, we could bath with a little bit of water, but, myself, I know I was carrying buckets of water from the reservoirs, the pools, the tankers, etc., just to flush, and have that in the health testing. So the kind of dialogue around it is shifting more away from poor people to a space around sanitation security for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. As you and I speak, we know that the Department of Education has missed its target when it comes to eradicating pit toilets, pit latrines in schools. In fact, data provided by the Limpopo Department of Education shows that more than 65,000 learners from 210 schools rely exclusively on pit toilets. Surely that's a cry for help, because we've seen the dangers associated with it. Lives have been lost, and of course hygiene is also at stake.
Yeah, Paul, it's unfortunate we, in this situation. But look, there is, kind of a light at the end of it. We, sitting and working with the Department of Education around transitioning the new generation sanitation solutions, okay, that shift away from the current practices that are being applied. But the current practices are part of a manifestation of our history and our institutional setup. Okay, until institutional and policy and planning processes transition to absorb the new pipeline of solutions, we're not going to see significant change. So a lot of it depends on the authorities and the decision makers and the political leadership to allow and absorb these new solutions that are available. It's not that they're not available, but it's going to require a very strong institutional change, because it's not just about the technology. It's a whole kind of package around value-based sanitation services. Okay, it's not an invisible solution. It requires operation and maintenance, but we can make a difference in the life of school children, in remote, largely rural areas and urban areas, from a water efficiency, but also from a more dignified and acceptable sanitation solution.
And around the numbers, with 2 billion people still living without safe toilets and sanitation crisis essentially being a global matter, we also know that South Africa's water security crisis has worsened. I mean, you touched on it as you were speaking before answering this question. But where does it leave us when it comes to addressing the problem, finding the solutions? Because you made mention that it's no longer just exclusively a matter of the poor, that it's affecting people from all walks of life.
Yes, and Paul, Water Research Commission being a national entity, our job is to look ahead into the future and find solutions. So we took a strategic decision 10 years ago to invest in research and innovation around non-sewage sanitation. And this was, to close the gap around bringing better sanitation to people in much more difficult situations, the informal settlements, the densities, But then this has been compounded by the availability of water, the issue of large finances required to build uniform waterborne systems. So this kind of decision was taken, and we are at the moment regarded as the world leaders, globally around bringing these solutions and practices. In fact, last month we inaugurated the first international conference on non-sewage sanitation. Now, I recently wrote an article that, we need to start having some extreme measures politically to harness the opportunity and transition it, because we can't keep building the same problems and come back and blame the government for building the same problems. Okay? So, we keep building sewers that fail. We keep building wastewater systems that fail. So it's time we took a step back and said, look, these are all kind of issues that are institutionally locked in regulations, in planning. We recently done a study looking at one of the big metros and their housing kind of programs. Yes. And the last thing they talk about in a housing program in the planning is where is the water coming from? They have this great plans of sewing everyone, in this kind of metros, that there is no water security in the future.
Yeah. So, I'd like for us to have this discussion, perhaps even on another day, a greater discussion that we could have to unpack the issues around water. But let me thank you for your time. Water Research Commission Executive Manager for Wastewater Management, Jay Bhagwan. Jay is also Chair of the International Non-Sanitation Body of the International Water Association. Bringing us to the end of the show. But before we get there, let's check in on the outcome of the X-Poll question we asked you.
Thank you. For that question again, host nation Australia facing off with India in the final of the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup. Who will emerge victorious? And this is how viewers voted this morning. 85.5%